One of the problems with recruiting for investment banking is not the knowledge or skills you acquire, but the access to talk with real investment bankers to put your best foot forward. Our sponsor, WSO Academy, can provide those connections with 60 head mentors who are finance professionals at top firms like Goldman, Centerview, and JP Morgan. Imagine being able to get on the phone within 24 hours with one of the Academy's 1,300 mentors right before a critical interview. Get on the waitlist for WSO Academy today by clicking the link in the show notes or by visiting wallstreetoasis.com/academy. All right. Welcome to Investment Banking Insights. My name is Alex Mason, and I am your host. This is the show dedicated to helping you understand both the technical and non-technical aspects of the investment banking process, specifically the recruiting process. If you're trying to learn this stuff and you're from a non-finance background like me, you're probably trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm here to help you with that process. Okay, so today we're talking about this concept of enterprise value, but I want to hone in on specifically a certain type of security that's a little bit interesting. It's called convertible bonds. Now, what are convertible bonds? Convertible bonds are a type of security that's kind of cool because they start out as debt, but kind of like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly. They transform from a debt instrument to an equity instrument. And what that means is that when the bonds are issued, they pay a fixed amount of interest, just like normal debt. Then at a certain exercise price, the bonds can be converted into shares of common stock. At that point, they are no longer bonds and they no longer pay interest. Now, this is kind of an interesting invention, really, I think, because you might wonder, like, why does this exist? Why does somebody create convertible bonds when regular bonds and regular stock already serves certain purposes? Well, the answer, I think, is it's a way for investors to share some of the upside of a company if things go well and if the stock price goes up a lot. But at the same time, there's this downside protection because the investor could just decide not to convert their bonds and keep their investment in the form of a loan. Now, loans pay interest, right? And loans are also different than equity in the sense that they're legally enforceable contracts. So there's a higher likelihood of getting paid in the event of bankruptcy when compared with regular equity, where if the company goes down, you could very well lose everything. Whereas if you own a company's debt, there's a chance that you actually get paid back some of that debt. Now, knowing all this, how would you treat convertible bonds as part of an enterprise value calculation? The answer is a little bit tricky because it depends on whether or not the bonds themselves are in the money. And by in the money, I mean that is the stock price is above the exercise price on the bonds. Remember when we walked through that example with a treasury stock method of options being exercised? And if the options are in the money, then there would be a dilutive effect to the overall share base. Well, it's a similar type of scenario with convertible bonds, but it works a little bit differently. And we'll get to an example in the next episode. But just to illustrate the concept, convertible bonds go from fixed income to equity. So if the bonds are in the money, you would count them as additional dilution and you would add them to the equity value of the corporation, just like we did when we discussed options. If the bonds are out of the money, which is when the share price is lower than the exercise price, then you would add the face value of the bonds to the company's debt. Does that make sense? Because they're a little bit different than options. Options are it's just like a possibility. It's something that can happen. And then if you exercise them, boom, it becomes stock. With convertible bonds, it's a little bit different. Similar concept, but a little bit different because you start out as debt and you convert to equity. And remember, in the EV calculation, you're adding equity and debt to that calculation. So you're going to be adding the convertible bonds somewhere. it just depends on where you're adding it. You could be adding it to the debt side, which would be a little bit different than adding it to the equity side. And there's a little bit of math that needs to be done if those bonds are converted in order to determine the dilutive effects, which we're going to be discussing next. So definitely check out the next episode where we walk through a specific convertible bond dilution example. And boy, it's kind of interesting. So I'm excited about it. Join me next time. But for now, this has been Alex Mason with Investment Banking Insights. I hope you have a great day.